Welcome to Light of Eternity. This channel is dedicated to sharing the profound and life-changing stories of those who have crossed over to the other side and returned with remarkable near-death experiences. If you enjoy these captivating stories, please take a moment to hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay notified of new content. It's completely free and truly helps the channel reach more people who may need these messages of hope and inspiration. So, get comfortable, grab a cup of coffee or tea, and join me as we dive into today's extraordinary experience. In the quiet rhythm of day-to-day life, most of us rarely pause to consider what lies beyond our existence. We wake, we work, we laugh, and we cry, consumed by the cycle of routine that weaves its way through our lives. The extraordinary seems distant, almost foreign, something that happens to someone else, never to us. But for one woman, Pam, a dental assistant living an ordinary life, the veil between the familiar and the unimaginable was lifted in the most unexpected way. Pam's life, up until that point, was like so many others. She woke each morning to the demands of her job, serving patients and navigating the daily challenges we all face. There was nothing outwardly remarkable about her story until the day her life took a dramatic turn. On what seemed like an ordinary day, Pam found herself standing at the edge of life itself, peering into the great unknown. Through a near-death experience, Pam's journey defied the boundaries of this world, taking her to a place most of us can only imagine, a place beyond time, beyond pain, and beyond the limits of human understanding. It was here, in this extraordinary realm, that she encountered a presence so profound that it would forever change her view of life and death. In that sacred space, she met Jesus, and through that meeting, she received a message that would alter the course of her existence. What she experienced was not just a brief glimpse into another world, it was a revelation that there is something far greater waiting for each of us. Pam's story is a reminder that, even in the midst of the most ordinary of lives, the extraordinary is just a breath away. Pam's journey into the beyond did not begin with fanfare or revelation. Instead, it started in the darkest depths of despair, a place that, tragically, far too many know all too well. Life had not been kind to her. From the outside, she appeared as just another woman going about her daily duties as a dental assistant, but inside, a storm had been raging for years. The weight of her pain was not something she could express to those around her, nor did anyone seem to notice just how deeply she was hurting. Her life was marred by abuse and sorrow, and she had endured more than most could ever imagine. Trapped in a toxic marriage where violence reigned, Pam's hope had slowly eroded. Night after night, she faced beatings at the hands of her husband, a man who viewed her not as a partner but as someone to dominate. The emotional and physical wounds ran deep, and though she tried to hold on for her children, the walls were closing in. With every blow, her spirit fractured a little more, until there was almost nothing left. There seemed to be no way out. In those days, the resources that exist today for victims of abuse were either unavailable or too far out of reach. People whispered behind closed doors, telling her to make the best of it or to lie in the bed she had made. There was no safe space, no one she could turn to. Her children were her only source of light in this darkness, but even then, she feared that her presence in their lives was doing more harm than good. The thought plagued her, perhaps they would be better off without her. Perhaps they could escape the cycle of violence if she were no longer there to hold them back. In a moment of quiet, crushing agony, Pam made the decision to end it all. She no longer saw a future for herself. She was convinced that the only way to protect her children from the man who had turned their home into a battlefield was to remove herself from the equation. It was not a decision made lightly, it came from a place of deep, unbearable pain. Her suicide attempt was not a plea for attention. It was a final act of surrender, a silent scream for peace, a peace she believed she would never find in the realm of the living. As she took the steps that would, in her mind, end her suffering, there was no fear, only resignation. The noise of the world around her faded into nothingness, and with a heavy heart, Pam embraced what she believed was the end. She did not expect an afterlife. She did not expect salvation. All she wanted was release from the agony that had become her existence. But as the darkness began to close in, something unexpected happened. Instead of slipping away into oblivion, Pam felt herself being pulled somewhere else. She didn't know where or why, but it became clear that her journey was far from over. In that moment, Pam crossed a threshold few ever returned from. She had stepped into the unknown, leaving behind the torment of her life, yet carrying the scars of her pain with her. Pam had sought death as an escape, but what she found on the other side was beyond anything she could have ever imagined. Her story was far from finished, and as she would soon discover, there was a purpose for her pain, a message of hope, waiting for her in the most unlikely of places. In that moment of despair, when Pam had believed she was ending her story, the real journey was only just beginning. As Pam's life slipped away, she anticipated nothing but the cold embrace of eternal darkness. She had resigned herself to the idea that death would offer her the peace she could not find in life. But as the grip of life loosened, something remarkable happened, something she never expected. Instead of being swallowed by oblivion, Pam found herself pulled into a realm that was entirely different from anything she had imagined. It was as if she had crossed a threshold into another dimension, one where time and space dissolved, and only the essence of her being remained. At first there was a stillness, a silence so profound that it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. And then, slowly, a light began to emerge. It wasn't the harsh, blinding light that one might expect. No, this light was warm, gentle, and enveloping. It radiated from a source that was not immediately visible, yet Pam could feel its presence all around her. The light carried with it a sense of peace that was so profound, it felt as though every wound in her soul was being soothed. In this otherworldly expanse, Pam felt lighter, as if the weight of her earthly suffering had been lifted from her shoulders. She was no longer bound by the pain that had consumed her for so long. Instead, she felt free, more free than she had ever felt in life. And then, as the light grew stronger, Pam became aware that she was not alone. There, standing before her, was a figure she instantly recognized, though she had never seen him before. It was Jesus. His presence was overwhelming, not in a way that instilled fear, but in a way that filled Pam with an indescribable sense of love and acceptance. The light that radiated from him wasn't just around him, it came from within, bathing everything in its warmth. It was as though the very essence of love had taken form, and that form was standing before her. Pam had feared judgment. She had feared that her decision to end her life would be met with condemnation. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw no judgment there, only compassion, pure and infinite. In his gaze, Pam felt seen in a way she never had before. He saw her pain, her suffering, and her despair. He saw the darkness that had driven her to the brink, but more than that, he saw her soul, her true self, untainted by the struggles of life. And in that moment, Pam felt the love that she had been searching for her entire life. It was a love that transcended anything she had ever experienced on earth. It was unconditional, all-encompassing, and overwhelming in its depth. There were no words exchanged, but none were needed. The love that flowed from Jesus to Pam was so strong that it spoke directly to her heart, filling every empty space that had once been consumed by loneliness and pain. In his presence, Pam felt welcomed. Not just welcomed, but wanted. For so long she had believed that her existence was a burden, that she was unworthy of love or peace. But here, in this sacred place, she was shown that she was worthy of love, worthy of compassion, worthy of redemption. Jesus embraced her with a warmth that made her feel like she was coming home, a home she had never known existed. There was no anger, no disappointment, only a profound sense of acceptance. Pam realized that all the things she had believed about herself, the guilt, the shame, the feeling of being unlovable, were false. In the presence of such divine love, those burdens melted away, leaving behind only the truth she was loved, wholly and completely, for who she was, not despite her flaws but because of her humanity. As Pam stood in this divine presence, she felt a connection not just to Jesus, but to something much larger, a connection to the entire universe, to all of creation, and to the boundless love that underpins it all. It was as if, for the first time in her life, she understood the true nature of existence. This was not an end. It was a beginning, a return to the source of all love and all life. But as much as she longed to stay in this place of infinite peace, Pam knew her journey was not over. Jesus had more to show her, more to tell her. Though she had come seeking an escape, what she found was a message of hope, one that would carry her back into the world of the living, where she would share the love she had experienced with those still searching for their own. Pam had expected to find death. Instead, she had found life in its purest, most beautiful form. In the presence of such overwhelming love and compassion, Pam's heart began to open in ways she hadn't thought possible. She felt safe, cradled in an energy so pure it soothed every wound, every scar her life had left upon her soul. But just as Pam was ready to surrender fully to this peaceful embrace, Jesus spoke to her not with words as we know them, but with a voice that reverberated deep within her, more powerful than any earthly language. What he shared was not what Pam had expected. She had thought she would find rest here, that she would finally be released from the pain and suffering of her earthly existence. But what she found instead was a mission, a calling that would take her back to the life she had been so desperate to leave behind. Jesus told her that her time on earth was not yet complete, and though Pam's heart trembled with confusion, he reassured her with his infinite love. "There is more for you to do," he said. "Your journey is far from over." Pam felt the weight of those words sink into her very being. She had believed her life held no purpose, that her suffering was all there was. But now, in the presence of the divine, she understood that every hardship she had endured, every moment of despair, had been leading her to this moment. Her pain had not been meaningless. It had prepared her for something far greater, a message she would carry back with her to the world of the living. "You will be a storyteller," Jesus continued, his words like a balm to her aching heart. "You will share what you've learned, and through your stories, you will bring hope to those who need it most." Pam had never considered herself a storyteller. She was just an ordinary woman, broken by the hardships of life. But in this moment she understood that her experiences, her struggles, had been shaping her for this very purpose. She wasn't meant to remain in the darkness, she was being asked to step into the light and shine that light for others. Tears filled her eyes as she realized the profound honor and responsibility of the task before her. Jesus was not asking her to return to the suffering she had left behind, he was giving her a new perspective, a new purpose. She wasn't being sent back to endure more pain. She was being sent back to help others find their way through it, just as she had. Her heart swelled with a mixture of awe and fear. She had wanted to escape, to leave the world behind. But now, faced with this divine mandate, she felt something stir within her, something stronger than fear, stronger than pain. It was hope. Hope that the message she would carry could change lives, just as her own life was being transformed in that very moment. Pam understood that her story wasn't just hers anymore. It was a gift, one meant to be shared with those who were still lost in the darkness, just as she had been. She would be a beacon for others, guiding them toward the love and light she had found here in this sacred space. Jesus' gaze never wavered, his love never diminished. "You are not alone," he told her. "I will be with you, guiding you, every step of the way." In that moment, Pam felt a surge of strength she had never known before. The fear and doubt that had gripped her heart for so long began to fall away, replaced by a sense of peace and purpose that she had never experienced in life. She understood now that she had been chosen not because she was perfect or strong, but because she had lived through the darkness and had survived. She had seen the other side, and now it was her mission to share that vision with the world. "You will return," Jesus said, "and when you do, you will carry with you the message of hope." Pam nodded, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. Her life was no longer her own, but a vessel for something much greater. She had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to bring healing and light to those who were still trapped in the shadows. And so, with one last embrace of divine love, Pam felt herself being drawn back into her body, her heart full of the promise that she would not return as the same broken woman. She would return with purpose, with hope, and with a mission to share the love she had found in the presence of Jesus. Pam had not expected to return to life. In the moments before she crossed over, she had been so certain that her journey on earth was over, that death was her final escape from the unbearable pain she had carried for so long. But now, as she felt herself being pulled back from the warmth and peace of the afterlife, back into the cold, harsh reality of the world she had tried to leave behind, her heart was filled with a strange and unfamiliar blend of heaviness and hope. The return was not easy. As her consciousness re-entered her body, she awoke on the hospital slab, the sterile smell of the room, and the distant beeping of machines greeting her senses. The sensation of the world's weight, the physical pain, and the memory of her desperate attempt to end her suffering all rushed back at once. But this time, it was different. This time she carried something with her, something that had not been there before. Deep within her, the memory of her celestial encounter with Jesus was imprinted on her soul, a reminder that her life had a purpose beyond what she could see. The doctors and nurses surrounding her were astonished. Pam had come back from the brink of death, and as they worked to stabilize her, they had no idea of the profound transformation that had just taken place within her. She had entered that hospital a broken woman, one who had given up on life and on herself. But now, lying on that cold slab, she felt the faint flicker of hope beginning to grow in her chest. Though her body was weak and her mind still reeling from the experience, Pam could feel that something had shifted within her. She was no longer the same person who had entered the hospital that day. She had seen the other side, had been held in the presence of divine love, and had been given a message that was now burning inside of her, waiting to be shared with the world. The days and weeks that followed were not easy. The physical recovery from her suicide attempt was painful, and the emotional scars from years of abuse were still raw. But through it all, Pam held on to the promise she had received during her near-death experience, the promise that within 2 years, her life would transform in ways she could not yet understand. As she began to heal, Pam noticed subtle but undeniable changes in herself. The despair that had once consumed her was slowly being replaced by a sense of purpose. The feelings of worthlessness that had plagued her for so long were fading, replaced by the knowledge that she was loved and that her life mattered. She began to open her heart to the possibility that her journey wasn't over, that, in fact, it had just begun. It wasn't long before Pam began to share her experience with others. At first she was hesitant, unsure of how people would react to her story. But the more she spoke about what had happened to her, about her encounter with Jesus, the message of hope she had received, and the mandate she had been given to return to life with a new purpose, the more she realized just how deeply her story resonated with those around her. People who had lost hope, people who were grieving, people who were struggling with their own demons, they all found something in Pam's story that gave them a sense of comfort, of peace, and of hope. Her words, once silenced by the weight of her suffering, had now become a source of healing for others. And as the months passed, Pam began to see the promise of transformation unfolding before her eyes. Her life, once filled with darkness, was now illuminated by the light of the divine love she had encountered. The relationships in her life began to change, new opportunities opened up, and she found herself walking a path that she had never imagined. Pam had returned to the land of the living, not as the broken woman who had once sought escape, but as a messenger of hope, a beacon of light for those still wandering in the shadows. Her journey had only just begun, and with each step, she carried the memory of her encounter beyond the veil, knowing that she was never alone and that her life had a purpose greater than she had ever dreamed. Pam's life, once defined by despair and hopelessness, had taken on an entirely new meaning. After her near-death experience and the powerful encounter with Jesus, she no longer saw herself as a victim of circumstance. She was no longer the broken woman who had sought refuge in death. Instead, she embraced a role that had been unimaginable before she became a storyteller, a messenger of hope. And with this new purpose came a profound transformation, one that not only changed her own life, but also touched the hearts of countless others. The message she had received during her time beyond the veil was clear. She was to return and share her story with the world, not to dwell in the pain of her past, but to bring light to those still caught in the darkness. Pam felt a deep responsibility to honor the divine mission given to her, and she found herself drawn to the written word as a means of sharing her experiences. At first, she wasn't sure where to begin. The weight of her journey, the depth of what she had seen and felt, seemed too immense to put into words. But with each passing day, the memories of her celestial encounter, the love and compassion she had felt in the presence of Jesus, became clearer. She could hear his voice guiding her, urging her to put pen to paper and let the stories flow. So Pam began to write. At first, it was difficult. The emotional weight of revisiting her near-death experience and the pain that had led her there was overwhelming. But as she persevered, something incredible began to happen. The words came more easily, almost as if they were being channeled through her. She was not just telling her own story, she was telling the stories of those who had passed on, souls she had connected with during her experience, who had left messages of love and healing for the living. Pam's books became vessels for these messages, stories from the afterlife filled with hope, compassion, and comfort. She wrote about the peace she had found on the other side, about the love that awaited each of us, and about the guiding presence of those who had passed on, but were still watching over their loved ones. Her writings were not just stories, they were lifelines for people who were grieving, struggling, or searching for answers. Through her books, Pam found a way to reach those who felt lost, just as she once had. Her words became a source of solace for people facing the unbearable pain of losing a loved one, offering them the reassurance that death was not the end, but a transition into something far more beautiful than they could imagine. She shared the lessons she had learned in the presence of divine love, that no one was ever truly alone, and that every soul was deeply loved, no matter the circumstances of their life or death. Pam's role as a storyteller wasn't just about sharing her own experience, it was about giving voice to those who could no longer speak for themselves. The souls who had passed on shared their journeys with her, and through her, they were able to communicate with the living. It was an extraordinary gift, one that Pam did not take lightly. She understood the sacredness of her mission and embraced it fully. Her writings didn't just comfort those grieving, they inspired those seeking a deeper connection with something greater. Pam's books became beacons of hope for people around the world, urging them to open their hearts to the possibility that there was more to life and death than they had ever believed. Her words carried the message that love transcends all, that the connections we make in life do not end with death, and that there is always hope, even in the darkest moments. As Pam's life continued to unfold, she found herself not only transformed by her own experience but by the profound impact her stories had on others. People wrote to her, sharing how her books had helped them heal, how they had found peace in knowing their loved ones were still with them, watching over them. Pam had gone from a woman who felt her life had no meaning to someone whose words were changing lives. In the end, Pam's life became a testament to the power of transformation, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unending presence of divine love. She had embraced her role as a storyteller, and in doing so she had not only healed her own heart but had given hope to countless others, lighting the way for those still searching for peace. Pam's story is not simply about a near-death experience. It's far more than a fleeting glimpse beyond the veil. It is a testament to the enduring power of hope and the unshakable truth that love transcends even death. What Pam encountered in the afterlife wasn't just the cessation of suffering, it was the embodiment of divine compassion, a love so profound that it shattered the walls of despair she had built around her heart. This love carried her back to the land of the living with a message not just for her, but for all who are struggling in the shadows. Pam's transformation wasn't a neat, linear process. The pain she endured before her near-death experience didn't magically vanish when she awoke on that hospital slab. But what did change was the lens through which she viewed her life. Before, she had seen herself as broken, unworthy, and without purpose. But in the presence of Jesus, she had been shown a truth so powerful that it altered the very fabric of her existence. She was loved. She had always been loved, and her life had meaning. That truth echoed through her soul long after her return to life. It was an echo that followed her every step, reminding her in moments of doubt and difficulty that she was never alone. More than that, it became a driving force in her life, compelling her to share what she had learned with others. Pam didn't return to life just for herself. She returned with a mission, a responsibility to give others the hope that had saved her. As she poured her experiences into her writings, Pam's words took on a life of their own. Each book she wrote was filled with the weight of her journey, with the wisdom and love she had encountered on the other side. Her stories became more than just tales of the afterlife. They were beacons of hope for the grieving, the lost, and the suffering. Through her books, Pam's message reached those who felt trapped in their own darkness, offering them a glimpse of the light that had guided her back from the brink of death. For those who have felt the weight of despair, Pam's words provide comfort. Her life is proof that even in the face of our greatest pain, there is a greater love waiting to hold us, heal us, and lead us toward peace. Her message echoes in the hearts of her readers, reminding them that death is not something to be feared. It is not an end, but a transition, one that is filled with the promise of reunion, love, and eternal peace. Pam's story teaches us that we are never truly alone. The loved ones who have passed on are still with us, their presence woven into the very fabric of our lives. The lessons she learned in the afterlife, that love transcends death, that each life holds profound purpose, are truths she now lives by. And through her storytelling, Pam ensures that these truths continue to resonate with those who need to hear them most. The beauty of Pam's journey is not just in the miraculous experience of seeing the other side, but in how she chose to live after returning. She could have kept her experience to herself, living quietly with the knowledge she had gained. But instead, she embraced her role as a storyteller, pouring her heart into her writing, determined to reach those who needed the same hope she had been given. Her life is a testament to the fact that we are all part of a greater story, one that does not end with death but carries on into eternity. Pam's story, and the stories of those she encountered in the afterlife, remind us that love is the eternal echo that reverberates through all of existence. Even in the face of life's greatest darkness, that echo persists, guiding us back toward the light. Pam's journey is proof that the light is always there, waiting for us, enduring through every trial and tribulation, and offering hope where there once seemed to be none. In the end, her story isn't just a message about life after death, it's a message about the power of love to transform us, to heal us, and to carry us through whatever comes next. It is a reminder that no matter what we face, there is always light, always hope, and always love, echoing through the eternal.